Today on Finally Seen, I'm joined by Nicole Gabai, a professional organizer whose work blends the structure of systems with the creativity of design. Nicole is the founder of Be Organized and the author of The Art of Organizing, a visually rich guide that treats organizing not as a chore, but as a creative and deeply personal act. And I can tell you from having the book myself, I love it. With over 2 decades of experience and a certification held by fewer than 100 virtual organizing professionals worldwide, Nicole invites us to see our spaces as canvases, not just containers. Her method is not only about clearing clutter, it's about restoring clarity. Nicole, I have been genuinely excited about this one because I absolutely love your organizing method. So I'm excited to share this with the audience. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks for having me on. And I'm just as excited that you're a big fan of my book.
Absolutely. Every time I tell somebody that I don't have a junk drawer, they're like, wait, how did you get rid of a junk drawer? And I was like, it was easy. I just followed Nicole's system. So, and before we
I
jump
love that.
in about the systems and the method and all of that, I want to go deeper into what
Mhm.
drives your work. You describe it as internal and external processes. When did you first realize that organizing was really about organizing energy?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it was such a process for me. So I think as I developed, more maturity and more confidence and more work experience, I really started to see that it was a process of unfolding, and I was benefiting so much from being organized that I was able to do more, and I could have more time to do the things I really wanted to do. I didn't feel bogged down by,
Clutter,
all the
yeah.
clutter that I used to. It bogs us
I can
down.
tell you that too, because once I rearranged my desk and used your zones method, which we'll get into later, it makes everything
Yeah.
so much faster. And I don't have to get up and go, where did I put that? Or, oh gosh, it's way over
Mhm.
there every single day. So, yeah, I absolutely love your
Exactly.
method. So
Thank you.
you have your organizing as both lifestyle and art form because your book is very very colorful. You're a designer and artist as well as being able to use, I guess, would be the left side of your brain too for organizing. Um, when did you really discover that those two were connected, both art and the lifestyle form? I guess, does that make sense?
Yes, of course. It's interesting. I'm actually ambidextrous.
Ah,
So it makes sense that I'm using both sides of my brain. It comes naturally to me that way. And I think I used to work in a corporate environment. I worked at MTV back in the day, and it was inspiring to work in such not just a fun atmosphere because it was hard work, but also it was an atmosphere that was very colorful and creative, and all those things were very uh, they were sought after, but they were prized and they were rewarded. So it fit right in for me because I am trained as an art student, but mostly as a textile designer. So the art part was always in me, and so, yeah, I think that kind of started early on when I realized I needed to start creating some kind of file folders. It started
well, and
from
I
there.
know in your book you talk about how you started in Montessori and you really loved how they had things kind of systematized. And so I'm sure that maybe you subconsciously got in there and you didn't realize that it was affecting you. And, our girls went to Montessori as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Everything is so nice, their little sections and whatnot. Um,
Yes. Yes, definitely. That informed everything I know how to do. But it didn't develop easily from I was a small child and then I'm working in a corporate environment and I knew what to do. You have to sort of adapt with now you're not in
you're not a little kid.
children's
Yeah.
school. You're not a little kid, you're now in this big corporate environment. How do I translate the skills that I'm
Yeah.
familiar with?
Um, I guess I know we see on TikTok and Pinterest and Instagram and all these beautiful photos of things. And I've talked about this
Yeah.
offline before, that I'll see these and I'll go, "Ugh, that is not realistic whatsoever." Does it look beautiful? Sure. But so how do you shift your clients from getting out of that Pinterest perfection mode and into blending aesthetics and real life working system.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you want to have the structure there, and there has to be a method, a system, because we want to always file for retrieval, put things away so you can find it. It's not just throwing it in a cabinet and closing the door or shoving it in that drawer and making sure you never open it, but you want to be able to make it functional. So I feel like as an artist, I've taken that a step further and said, but make it fun, like make it appealing and make it so that it's more beautiful for your own aesthetic. And what I know from experience is the more beautiful your system is, the more apt you are to use it. So I encourage that every step of the way. And once I get to know my clients, I get to see like, what are they into? Are they, do they play golf? Do they play cards? Are they an active person working in the working world, or are they retired? Are they a teacher? Kind of where are their more aesthetic influences coming from? And I like to bring that out
I
in
like
people.
that. And you're right. When you see a beautiful system that actually is well functioning for you, it's easy to keep it up. Like still don't have a junk drawer because I love my little bamboo uh, things that we have.
Yes.
And yeah, the
Insert.
inserts, and I can just open
Yes.
it up and I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's the thing. It encourages you to keep it organized. And, I know there's so many other systems out there. We all have heard about them or been exposed to them, but we can't organize by color. Like all my red things will go here. All of my green things will go there. It just isn't
Yeah.
sustainable.
I especially see that in refrigerators. People will have, maybe all red things over here. And I'm like, but you may use that red thing only once, but the other red thing every day.
Right, exactly. So that's when we fall back to the zone system. Like, how do we really make it practical for our
Well,
everyday life?
in one of your parts of your system is the back to one method. And this one I just think is probably I mean, they're the three main parts are just genius, but back to one, I know came from your MTV days. So tell us how that came about and what it is, because it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. So I mean, basically, I borrowed the terminology from working on TV shows that I worked on at Nickelodeon, et cetera. And whenever we had to reset the environment that we were shooting in, and actors come in, they move things around. And then once they leave and the director says cut and then they leave, everything is kind of out of place. So before we go back to filming, he'll say, okay, everybody back to one. And everyone agrees and knows that that's where we began. This is where each item was meticulously placed. This was where this character stood. This is where the lighting was. This is where the cameras were. So once everyone had previously agreed on it, now we all know exactly
Brilliant.
where to go. And that I thought, yeah, and I thought that's exactly what we do when we want to maintain order. We need that baseline, establish that baseline, and then be able to get back to it, hopefully on a daily
Yeah, and I
basis.
think it's even easy and fun for kids because you can make a game out of it. Okay, back to one.
Yes.
I know when my girls were little, we would watch Barney and we had the cleanup song, you know, clean up.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I feel like, I don't think there's a cleanup song now. So back to one, it would be just as fun. And I know kids like your method as well because it's so colorful and your
Yes.
illustrations in your book. You don't have just photos, you have illustrations that you did. So I know kids have been drawn to your method. Um, let's see. So the back to when you said every day, how long should somebody spend doing that? Like, let's say maybe they haven't totally organized like they should. Should they go ahead and start to maybe get back to one in the mix of their schedule?
I like to encourage people to do this at the end of the day. So then it's about 15 minutes because depending on where you've been working, is it your office? Is it your kitchen? Is it your studio of some kind? Depends on where you're working, obviously. But whatever those areas are, and even if you worked in your office and then you came home and you're hanging out in the living room and the kitchen, you want to spend like 15 minutes. Maybe it takes 15 minutes for each area or 15 minutes total, but give yourself at least that to get it back to one or as close as possible so that when you show up again the next morning, you know where you left off. You know what's on the desk
Well,
for
and it
today.
makes it such, like you talked about earlier with the energetics of having an organized space, going into the office and not having papers just strewn everywhere makes such a big difference. And to just know like, oh, all my stuff is here. And like this right here is my podcast section and my thinking section of my office. So I have everything
Nice.
I need
Nice.
for this section right here. And then every day it goes back to one. And in the mornings, it's easy to get my morning routine going because it's all right here. I don't have to look for my special pen. I don't have to look for my journal. It's all right here.
That's
So
great.
I guess
Yeah,
that's a
that's
segue
awesome.
into what is the sections, because I just mentioned this is my podcast and thinking section. So what's the section part of your
Yes.
method?
So that's a way of setting up a system, really. And let's say you're working in your room, maybe you're, I don't know how it's set up, but let's say it's your basement and you have the desk where you have your files and you have your computer and everything that's essential for your day to day job. But now you have other sections. You have this section in that space, which is just for podcasts. So you're going to have all the things you need at your fingertips in that particular
It
section.
makes it so easy too because it keeps it all clean. When I look at it, it looks nice because it looks organized on top of being clean. Uh, so
Yes.
yeah, and I don't know, it just makes me feel good that I have this special spot. So
Yes. And that's the whole point about the sections is that we want to kind of carve out sections for different activities we do in a space. Um, it just is, it adds clutter to your mind. You can't think as clearly. You might not be as creative because if you've got things from the desk with things from the podcast, with things from, your journaling and quiet time, it just doesn't give you that peace of mind so that you have exactly what you need in that
yeah,
section. And
that's
that's the key. It's about not having to be interrupted all the time, finding scissors. Where's my favorite stapler?
yeah,
Whatever it
and that's
is.
a great um, thing to bring up about interruption because I used to do my morning routine at my desk. And then, oh, ding, an email would come through or something, and it would just kind of knock me off. But now doing it here in this specific section, I don't get interrupted. And it really starts my day off a whole lot better. And then earlier, I
Yes.
mentioned that I have my desk set up with your zones. So tell us about the
Mhm.
zones. What does that mean?
So I was trying to remember how exactly I've come up with that part of the of the system, but I could never get it out of my mind once I started doing that. And that could have been, I think it started back in my corporate days when I didn't know anything about systems and I had everything on my desk and it all felt and seemed of equal importance. And I didn't have priorities, any way to gauge what items on my desk was more important or more useful than others. And I think over time with experience, I was like, okay, now that I have learned to make my filing system very cute because I'm going to have every color in the rainbow files and it's going to represent different things. And it was so pretty that I loved using it. So now I was able to get all the papers off my desk. But then I started to see that not everything was a priority. Not everything is of equal priority. And so once we can figure out how to gauge that and estimate maybe between zone one and two, three, and four, it helps so much strategically for how you approach your work and how you feel in your workspace or any
Yeah.
space. And the whole point being, because people use the word zones in different ways. And for me, I like to use the word sections when we divide up activities in different places that sort of have their outline. And then once we do each section like that, then we break it into zones where zone one items are the most important to you. You use them frequently. You love what you're using, your pens, your paper, your whatever items you need right there, the particular highlighters, markers, whatever it is you love and you need on a regular basis. That'll be your zone one. And those are at your
I,
fingertips. And
I
then we
love that
see.
because, I had never heard that concept before I was introduced to your method. And once I learned it, I was like, wait, why do I have five pencils on my desk? I only use one. So the other four can go somewhere else. And, it was also like what you said with papers. Oh, I don't reference this paper or this notebook every single day. Why is it taking up space on my desk? So I moved that
Right.
to section or zone two, so farther
Um,
away.
yeah, because you think of your immediate workspace as prime real estate, and it's like, what do you need at your fingertips? And when you can do that, you're also prioritizing activities. So when people think of decluttering, sometimes I think it's too broad of a topic to say we're just going to declutter. More to the point is we're going to declutter the things that are not necessary in our immediate space. And then we can assign it a different zone as it goes into lesser priority or less frequently used. So decluttering can be much more specific than just let's get rid of stuff.
Yeah, I see that a lot with articles out there and things on TikTok. Everybody's talking about decluttering being the most important thing, and it's like, well, that's step one, but it's
Right.
not the end.
Exactly.
And so I love
Right.
that your method actually goes past just decluttering, past just how do you feel
Mhm.
about a certain object, past the colors, and actually into
Right.
something that works with your lifestyle. I've seen that in the kitchen as well. It's like, wait, why am I
Mhm.
turning around and going to the other side of the kitchen every single time I need this? It needs to be right here. So it's, really
Exactly.
thinking through how you work with your house or your office. And
Yes.
we've been looking at houses to move. And it's funny because I'll look at things with an organizing mind now. So you've
Ah,
ruined me.
oh, good.
And so
Oh,
I'll look at something.
well, what stands out? Yeah, what
Well,
stands out for you when you
what
see a
I
new
thought was
space?
interesting is there was one particular house. It was a really cool house, but the pantry was really oddly small for the house. And I thought,
Mm,
well,
mhm.
with the zones, I could do it here. And it just was funny how I was able to switch to, no, I could make it work by using Nicole's zones. And so the
Oh,
smaller one would
oh,
be zone
oh,
one. Because it did have other cabinets and whatnot. Um,
so that's great. That's
Same with the
fantastic.
closets. Anytime I see the closets now, I'll look, okay, oh, we're gonna need to take advantage of the vertical space there.
I love it.
So yeah, in one kitchen we looked at, the cabinets didn't go all the way up to the ceiling. And I thought, well, that's a waste of
Mm,
vertical space.
right, right. Well, and that's the thing that I find so fascinating is because there is a system and it's just really 5 to 6 steps, you come back to it so
Mhm.
quickly now. Like whenever you see a space, you recognize what is most important in that
Yeah,
space.
absolutely. It's been a game changer for me. And I hate using the term game changer, but I mean, really it has because it just makes everything flow so much better. It's like, oh, somebody's coming over. No problem. Just give me 10 minutes, and I'll get everything back to,
Mhm.
or maybe not even 10 minutes. Usually it takes longer to put the dogs up than it does to prep everything else.
And getting back to
Right.
one.
Yeah. I feel like I have to get back to one for the dogs things, just like I would if they were toddlers. It seems like.
I totally agree. And as long as you have each section, like here's a toy section, here's the food section, and you have what you need. And that has another term, which is storing at the point of
Mhm.
use. So we want to work with your existing habits and the existing habits of your household.
Absolutely. Yeah. I ended up moving the food where there's, the dog food. I ended up moving that. And I always put that salmon oil on their food. I didn't have that in a section right by their dog food. So it was not as convenient. And I was doing it every day. And I thought, well, wait, why am I doing this? So I just moved
Right.
it right by the food. And now it's a lot easier.
It's there. Yeah, it just simplifies things. It's funny because I think in general, as a society, we've now been primed to think if you declutter, things will be easier or more streamlined. And that is true, like you said, to a point, but you have to have a system
Yeah.
underneath that.
Tired of overpriced energy drinks full of junk? Same. That's why I use Babella, a self-carbonating hydration packet that gives you clean energy, electrolytes, and vitamins without the crash. Just add water, shake, and sip. It's way more affordable than typical energy drinks and way better for you. Use code ChrisyBernal15 at checkout to get 15% off at drinkbabello.com. Hydration just got an upgrade.
So, Nicole, I wanted to ask you, what is a story from your own life, maybe a messy moment or chaotic space or something that taught you something surprising about organizing?
Well, interestingly, a life-changing experience is a divorce. And I've just been through one. It was very long and very difficult for 3.5 years. And the way my house is set up, I had my office in a guest room. And when this process wasn't happening, it made sense. It was fine. I didn't labor at my desk, 8, 10 hours a day, but that's the place where I would do certain work, whatever. So if I had guests there, it wasn't really interfering with what I needed to do. I could pull out a few things and I could take care of things. But as this divorce process unfolded, it was arduous and created so much paper, so many notebooks. I mean, there was that moment where I had piles everywhere and I was like, that's my internal trigger is I can't do this like this. I already know the problems that occur with horizontal filing. So that's when I decided, okay, now I need to make filing systems for this particular process. I need notebooks for this.
So yeah, divorce is hard enough. And then to add on the clutter and disorganization, that just makes so much worse.
So much harder. And there's just so much information. And, unfortunately, the lawyers benefit from creating more information. And it just was endless. So that guest room suddenly became synonymous for me with divorce. And I didn't want to go into that on that desk. I didn't want to work there. I didn't want to go in that room afterwards. And it just created too much tension for me to walk in there. And then I realized, when it was all over, I had another room that used to be my ex's office. And that was cleared out and saged many times. And suddenly I said, I need a separate room to be my office. I'm going to start fresh. And now I'm going to have this very lovely guest room. And that's what I did. I love the guest room now. I just had a guest stay there for 5 days. He loved it. And it's meant to be peaceful. There's no paper chaos. There's no filing cabinets in that room. All the things that made that room feel heavy. And it's actually a really lovely room. And I have a couple of chairs you can sit and read. And now the office is my proper office. And that space feels like the next phase of my life.
Now,
So
wow, that's a great example of how organizing can either, make a bad situation better or can give you that fresh start. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. And I ended up, of course, boxing up everything related to the process because now it's over. And yes, it's healing. And it's also cleared my space to be a space for future planning.
Yeah, physical space clearing, mental space clearing.
Yep. And I have a section down in the basement just for that topic. And I don't ever have to look at it. So it feels, there was closure, just being able to take all of that out of a living space and put it into the boxes where it needs to go for future reference if needed. But it definitely made that space more open, more peaceful, refreshing. So I cleared out a lot.
I love it.
Not just the clutter, it's also the emotional heaviness.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that for sure. So I know we've talked about this in the past, how clutter is often masking emotional weight, guilt, grief, fear, that sort of things. How do you guide someone in letting go when that comes up?
Well, it's kind of like an onion, like the layers and peeling away the layers of an onion. It's a process. And as I get to know my client, the first essential step is asking for help. That's kind of the first main thing that I look for. And as soon as they call me, I'm like, okay, sounds like they're ready. And I ask initial questions in the beginning also, just to be sure, make sure they're ready. It's a good time in their life. There's a there's room and space for this project. So once we establish that, you know, I do it with care, and empathy. And I talk to people about they show me what they have. And once they start to see the process, even they get to step back a little bit from each emotional attachment to every item. And after a while, I see the rhythm start up with my client and they start to see, like, okay, which section does this go in? When I did this closet for a client and she had everything under the sun in that closet except for maybe a refrigerator. So everything was in there, from bank records to ski jackets to children's artwork. And then there was china and there was Christmas presents. And there was so many sections in there. And first, of course, she was overwhelmed. But once we broke it down into little sections, and then we assigned, okay, this is going to be the toiletry section. This will be the traveling section. This will be your dressing section. And once we establish what the sections will be, it makes it so much easier to, if you want to call it, decluttering, because now we see which section it all belongs in. And when they hold it and say, I haven't used this cream in 15 years, I don't think I'm going to use it anymore. And then it becomes a more of a decision-making process, not a, memory lane thing where you're like, oh my God, I remember the hotel I stayed in when I got this beautiful cream and whatever. So it just helps become a little more objective when you have a system to fall back on.
We actually, I had my husband, clean out his closet because, guys are not usually the most organized. And once he pulled everything out, he was like, man, I've got a lot of crap in here. I'm like, yeah.
Right. Usually people don't even know what's in there because they can't see it anymore.
Yeah, 100%. He had stuff from like appointment reminder cards from 2016. I was like, why? Why do you need these in here?
Yeah.
And
that becomes the relationship with myself and my clients when I do one-on-one, is asking those kinds of questions. Would you use this? When would you use this? And, for what purpose? Well, they can break it down and suddenly they're like, oh, that's a toiletry item. That's something I use actually quite frequently. And that's my backup. It's not mini toiletries for travel.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Start to distinguish what really goes
and
where.
the same thing for my husband's sink. He had a lot of stuff on the counter that didn't need to be on the counter and could really actually be underneath. So once I explained to him, this is your zone 1. This is the stuff you use every single day, maybe multiple times a day. And, now it's nice and neat. It's easier to clean because it's not cluttered.
It's not covering the surface.
And we even got the vertical things for, make up those stands. Because I don't.
The little organizing unit. Did it make sense to him? Was he kind of buying into this? Was he saying, oh yeah, this zones thing makes
He
sense.
totally gets it now. And I've even had him do it with his office. And so his desk, he's not perfect at it, but he's getting there.
No, he is. No, I mean, and there's times when I'm working on several projects at the same time and things might be looking chaotic, but I know what factor one will be.
So you get there.
And when I'm ready, or when it's time, or when I have a meeting in my office, I know I can get back to one pretty easily.
In this whole moving process, you've got a great moving system and process and whatnot. And so we've already started like packing things up, and we are not using cardboard boxes for a lot of things because we want to have, it's things that maybe aren't going to necessarily be opened up right away because they're in maybe zone 4 or zone 3. And so we're not using cardboard boxes because we know they're probably going to go in either the attic or garage or storage somewhere. And we don't want that cardboard. I know you talk about not using cardboard. So many people do. Why should people not use cardboard?
Well, it depends if it's climate controlled or not, first of all. And then you look at how cold or how hot those spaces get. When cardboard gets too hot, there's glues there. There's other chemicals that start to disintegrate. They can melt. They can separate the boxes. The seams will start to come apart. So when put in extreme temperatures, cardboard doesn't hold up. And same with an attic. So basement, same thing. If a basement is too damp, the boxes will get damp. Yeah. And that's when you start to see books that got mold in them. You're like, how did this happen? Well, that's what happens if it's not dry enough, for example. So you do want to seek out um, bins, containers, whatever you're planning to use. Ideally, if they're see through, and you want to know that they're
Yeah.
airtight. And then there's certain things that you wouldn't place in a non-climate controlled environment. Like you really don't want to put your photos in that sort of environment. You don't want to put your best sweaters there. Those are things that need to be in a closet that is climate
Well, and
controlled.
something too that I didn't think about before I read your book was that rodents like to eat the cardboard. And I didn't even think about that, but it totally makes sense. They do. So,
They like paper. They like paper. If you back in the day, wherever you piled up newspapers, inevitably there'd be a little critter. And yes, I've seen many cardboard boxes when I get to it, and there's chewed out
yep,
corners.
100%.
That's
I
what they
even in our
use for
pantry
you.
try to not have any cardboard anything. Like if
Mhm.
it comes in cardboard, it quickly goes into an airtight container instead. And
Yeah, that's
usually
great.
for Sienna, I will cut out the instructions or something and put them on there so she can read it. But for the most part, I like things in clear containers so we can see exactly what it is
Yes.
with a label, of course.
Yes, of course. Needs a label.
My husband used
Always.
to think I was nutty with all my love of labels, but now he gets it. And, he has things like he does have a few containers in the garage that aren't see through. So he clearly marked on every single side what it
Oh, that's
was.
great.
And so I was
That's
like,
great. That will help you in the long run. A lot of times when we're moving, when I'm helping a client move, I always say, yes, it's an investment of a little more time in the upfront portion, but it will pay off in spades in the back end when you get to the new space and you know what's where and you can prioritize. Well, I know I'm not going to reach for my, cassette tapes and my old DVDs immediately. Eventually I want to get to that and, change it to digital, but you don't need that particular box in your office or front and center. It can be in the back of a closet. Just that amount of decision making is made so much
yeah,
easier.
absolutely. And I love how you talk about your moving system to have numbers on everything and assign each room a number. That way the movers know, oh, this goes in room one, easy peasy. And you're not
Yes.
having to sit there and direct five people all at once and the madness. And you also talk about having a
Exactly.
like move-in box. Like when you first get there, the box that,
Oh, the
yeah,
first
yeah,
night
that's
box.
genius
Yes.
because I feel like a lot of people
Oh,
are kind of like they have all those things, but maybe not in a box. And so they're like, oh crap, where did we
no.
put that?
Exactly. And you don't realize until you break it down, you have to think it through and say, what do I need for my first night? Because inevitably, I want to say 100% of the time, you're tired by the time the day of moving comes into, bedtime. You're exhausted. You're not going to walk around and open 7 boxes to find your favorite pillow. So you might as well have a first night and think it through. Um, even the mattress pad,
Mm.
like the things that you really will use and maybe in the future, but especially that first night, you want your clean sheets, you want your comforter, your duvet, your favorite pillows. And sometimes you don't have the lighting that you want in a new space. There might be a major light in the middle of the ceiling, but you're so tired. You want to lay down in bed and have a little lamp next to you. So those little things matter for your comfort and for your sense of calm because moving is chaotic unless you have a system.
Yeah, which it's like it, it's challenging and can be chaotic feeling, but when you have a system, it just reduces it so much more. And
Exactly.
at the beginning, I talked about how you are one of the fewer than 100 people with a virtual organizing certification. I had never heard of that. Obviously, we all understand the virtual concept, but virtual organizing goes a little bit different than it does when you're in person. How does that work?
So that's a great question because I feel like, yes, over time, people have been able to help each other, Zoom, FaceTime, etc. But when I approached it through a system and a certification, the there is a foundation for it that really made sense to me. And the first time I meet with a client, we kind of do an initial walk through the whole space, whether it's kitchen and pantry, or it's the whole house, or whatever it is. It might be just the garage. And once we evaluate what's there, like they will show me, they walk through, it's in real time, it's one on one, and they will show me, oh, let me see that cabinet. What's in there? Oh, this cabinet. Oh, I don't know. I have this set of dishes. My mother gave them to me. So many of them broke, but I just don't know. I think I don't know. Maybe I don't need them. So I start to make lists for myself. Okay, let's consider donating that box of mismatched and broken plates and, things like that. So at the end of it's a 1 hour session because it is pretty intense. At the end of that session, I've made enough notes for myself. And then what I think is the key is this ongoing journal that we keep through what I take notes on with my client, and then I send it to my client. So they can see in progression, where did they start? What are things we're thinking about doing? What are things what's her homework or his homework? It's like I write everything down in that journal in different sections. And that way they have a fingertips glance at this and they can see, okay, I forgot about this, that, and the other thing. Boy, Nicole captured it. Not that I capture everything, but I try to really simplify their process because their prism that they're seeing it through is complete overwhelm, way too much stuff, and haven't been able to make any sense of it. And, months turn into years and then years go by. And then, I see that people sometimes have shame around that. They're really embarrassed. And, my favorite thing to say, which is so true, I don't judge. I'm there to help. And I think that helps people realize, like, I see this every day. This is what people call me for. So for me, it's like a puzzle. I'm just immediately slicing and dicing and putting the puzzle into place.
You said that. It makes me think of that. There's a meme that has been going around saying a professional athlete is never going to judge you for going to the gym, getting started, no matter how late you got started. And it's like, you're never going to judge somebody for asking for help. So it's like, yes, you made that important decision. I am absolutely not judging you. I am applauding you.
Exactly. And I'm there to support in every way possible. And even when there's moments of stuck, there could be, oh, I just can't make a decision on that box today. Okay, let's move on to another section.
I love that.
And yeah, I mean, there's no straight line through how do we do it. It's not cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all. It's really understanding my client, how they think. Like, I feel like my job is to understand how they think and what is intuitive for the client. How will you find this? Oh, you have this thing over here for Thanksgiving, and then you have a crock pot over there, and then you have this other serving tray here. Why don't we put it all together? Let's have a Thanksgiving section.
Yeah, that's what I've done. I've got my Christmas section. We've got the birthday section. I even did that with my like the wrapping paper, and we all keep those bags. That way we're not just throwing them away. So I've got them in birthday bags. I've got Christmas bags.
Great.
So it makes so much sense. And I remember you were saying you've had this one particular virtual organizing client, and y'all did her closet. And once she learned how to do it for herself in her closet, she was able to then take that to the other parts of her home. And I think that's one of the differentiators as well with your method, is that it's teaching you an actual system that you learn how to look at things differently than just decluttering or arranging by color or shapes or something like that.
Exactly. And we know now for sure, the science has shown us that we are creating new neural pathways in our brain. And it's not been the most effective way to do that we now know is through the virtual process, because we learn in ways that are tactile, visual, and auditory. So when I am guiding a client into, this is what we're going to do for zone 1, this is how we're going to approach zone 2, and make sure it makes sense to them, but they are physically moving something from one place to another, they are now creating new neural pathways so that they do think different. We know the science is behind it 100%. And there's more research being done on that, and how important it is that we all have this neuroplasticity that doesn't end when you're 10 years old. It goes on for the rest of our lives. We can very intentionally create new habits and some people grow up learning organizing skills. If that's the case with their parents, they're lucky. But most of us really don't know the methods. And the habits we fell into are what got us in whatever predicament we're in to begin with. So that's when people really need to realize, that's when they call me for help, is like, wow, I've been doing something a certain way and it isn't working. How do I change this? So definitely the virtual organizing method has proven to be incredible to teach people new ways of thinking.
I think that is an important thing to bring up too, that they're doing it themselves. And I know you said something else and it made me think, when I learned about your method, it blew my mind because I was always tidy, but that's not the same as organized. And now I
Right.
can be both tidy and organized. And that's just such an interesting thought that you don't think about. And I grew up, I know how to be tidy, but like this system
Yeah.
is just so different. And then you also mentioned, talking about them doing it themselves. Let's say you have
Mm.
somebody who maybe can't physically do it themselves. Is it okay if they have somebody to help them, like maybe a caretaker or a cousin or something?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always say to my clients, are you comfortable moving things around, or do you have extra support for the muscle part of this? Because there are some heavy lifting pieces that are going to happen. And they have to have some support, because sometimes my clients, if they're older or they have back issues or whatever, shoulder issues. So yeah, they need to have some help. And I'm happy to do the session with both people if they're interested. So yeah, to have that support is definitely essential. It's one of the first things I
Awesome.
ask.
So you said it was when you were saying about the backs and hurting and whatnot. And I know that even myself, if I get started on an organizing project, sometimes I'll find myself going, oh gosh, my body's starting to hurt. How long do you suggest people organize for at a time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. People think they can do it all weekend and then it'll be done. But no, it doesn't help you at all to do that. You burn out and your body will hurt. And it's a lot of heavy lifting and moving things and making a lot of decisions. I recommend 3 to 4 hours at a
Yeah,
time.
the decision part, I
Um,
think, is what a lot of people don't understand is going to be so exhausting.
exactly. Exactly. It's like when you're done, you need to take a walk or have a glass of wine or, something very different to move your body and move your sensibilities out of this minutia place. Because you do need to make a lot of decisions that seem inconsequential in the moment, but every little bit adds up, because once each little decision is made, you now have a system to fall back on for back to one.
You always stress the importance of dividers for drawers. And I can't tell
Yes.
you how I actually smile when I open up my sock drawer, because I have them sectioned. So I've got my athletic socks and then dress socks and nighttime socks. It's like everything is in its own little thing, and just grab it and it's easy. So I love the little
Exactly.
divider.
Exactly. That really does help. Those dividers are great. Yeah, we don't realize how chaotic it is if you open a drawer and you have, like you just mentioned, three different types of socks. And then if you're rifling through, it makes it really hard to start your day off, on a smooth
Well, and I
trajectory.
used to have that organizer that kind of looks like a honeycomb for the socks.
Oh, yes, yes,
But
yes.
honestly,
Yeah,
that wasn't as helpful because I couldn't really see exactly what the sock was. Sometimes it was a little too small, and it wasn't, there's no section. It was all just one big honeycomb. So it kind of felt a little,
yes,
it was definitely less organized feeling than having the actual dividers. And I think
dividers.
a lot of
Yeah.
people think organizing is expensive as well, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't. You can definitely upcycle all kinds of containers you receive, little boxes, bigger boxes. You can upcycle a lot of stuff and use those as dividers in the drawers as well. Maybe in the beginning, there might be some upfront costs to being organized, but they're so essential. It's like bookends. I have so many bookends because I use them in so many different ways. And it seems like maybe a waste. Like, oh my gosh, I might have 12 pair, but I use them in so many different ways. they are essential. So I'll make a little investment, up front
Well,
for
and
that.
there are so many sales happening all the time. And it's like, so just start to make a list of what you need. Let's say you can't afford to buy the particular containers right now. It's like, go ahead and establish what you're going to need. Then keep an eye
Exactly.
out for a Prime Day or one of the
Yes.
container store sales days, or Target has, they have a lot of sales themselves as well. If somebody wants to reach out to you and have a virtual consultation, how do they do that?
Oh, you can reach out through my website, which is the letter B like boy, organized.net. And otherwise, I think if you just Google my name, it comes up in so many different ways to reach me. I am pretty sure even my office phone number is out there. But send me an email, and I always respond. And the consultation is free. And it just gives us both a sense of, is it a good fit? That's another thing you want to consider when you're working with an organizer, whether it's virtual or in person. You want to make sure there's a connection, that you feel that you trust the person, or you can certainly learn from this
Or that they
person,
get you?
that they get you, they understand how you think, definitely. And there's a spectrum of people who need help organizing. And it goes from, very uh, basic stuff that needs to be done all the way to chronic disorganized habits. And depends on how far you are on the scale. There are actually surveys that you can take to decide and figure out where you fall on the spectrum of disorganization. And then we have um, they're more specialized organizations within the organizing title that specialize in chronic disorganization. For example, people with ADHD, and all different types of extremes that we find as well.
I know for me, my doctor wants me to go get tested for ADHD. It's like, well, I think pretty much all of us would have it now, but there's so much stuff all the time around, and having the zones has really helped with not feeling so overwhelmed and distracted by all the little things. And so I totally see what you're
Yeah,
saying
that's
with the
great.
ADHD or whatever. Even
Yes.
Sienna, she understands your concepts of zones and whatnot. And so, with her missing parts of her brain, she can still get it and know how to organize herself. So your
Wow.
system is good for everybody.
Oh, I'm glad that it makes sense, to people, because sometimes you don't know if it's if it doesn't make sense to somebody, they're not going to
Yeah,
maintain it.
exactly.
And that's my feeling with a client, is collaborating with them. I guess there's certain clients that say, "Hey, there's my closet. Go ahead and organize it." That is probably more along the lines of what you mentioned of being tidy. Let's make it look pretty. That's fine. But if the person comes back to that closet and they can't find their favorite purse, then, what good is this? It looks great, but you can't find anything. That
Yeah,
doesn't
that
work.
makes a lot of sense. And I know you've got a taste
Yeah.
of your organizing method on your website that people can download for free. And then, of course, your book is
Yes.
available at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, everywhere,
Everywhere.
all the places. And it's a beautiful
Yep.
hard book,
Yeah.
hardcover. So it would even make a nice gift, like especially if somebody, yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I show everybody? Look,
Yeah, so
there it
beautiful.
is.
Very, very
Thank you.
beautiful. Yes. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you again so much for coming on and sharing. I know we could talk for hours about this because we kind of have before.
My favorite subject.
So, but thank you again for sharing this. And I know that there's at least one person who's going to be completely changed in how they look at organizing from this. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks for having
Absolutely.
me.